Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host for the Salisbury Independent newspaper. We've got the newsmaker of the week, of the day, right here with us today, Jack Heath, president of the Salisbury City Council. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here.
So you've just made some news yesterday. What happened?
Well, I announced that I was going to begin a year-long journey that will end up with me being the new county executive.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
What triggered this? Why do you want to do this?
That's what my wife said to me. I'll be honest with you. I see a great potential for the county. And I've learned a lot in the since we sat here several years ago about how to get things done and how the government works. And the one thing that I've learned is communication is the key. And I think that I'm the right person to work closely with the county council to maximize the potential of the county. And that's my goal.
Right, and we hear about that, some of the divisions between the county executive and the county council. Where does it come from? Have you been able to figure that out?
No, I try to focus on what the positive things that I can do to make the situation better. I know most of the guys on the council, the county council, some of them real well, other ones not so well, but I know them all. And in their hearts, they want to do what's right for the county. And I think they're screaming out silently for the ability to talk to the other side of the table and work together, and that's just not happening. So one of the major things that I'm going to do is, based on my experience, is try to communicate better, build consensus, negotiate where I have to, and then come up with things that are better for the citizens.
Right, and you've kind of learned this in your city council role, where you have to work with the mayor, and it's sort of the same relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And we meet weekly to talk about what's upcoming. Sometimes the meetings are very cordial, sometimes the meetings are a little tense. But I think that at least by establishing the communication, there's always a solution to the problem. The question is, how do you get there, and what are the components that allow you to do that?
Now, you're going to try something that's kind of unique. You're an unaffiliated voter.
Yep, I'm an unaffiliated voter.
So you're not a Republican or a Democrat. You
No.
probably have some feelings about that. What are the challenges with running that way?
Well, I mean, there's an obvious challenge. The obvious challenge is, by the rules, I have to get signatures of 1% of the total registered voters in Wicomico County. And I don't have to collect them myself, but I have people who are helping me collect those signatures, and my wife and my family and I enjoy that part of it.
Right.
I love talking to the people.
Campaign while you're out there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So that's one of the things. The other thing is, it's a positive and it's a negative. What I liked about the Eastern Shore when I came down here was no one ever asked you whether you were a Republican or a Democrat. We voted for the person who we thought could best do the job.
Right.
And I believe in that. I believed in that since I was 18 years old. And I think that it's been demonstrated that that approach can be successful. When I was elected president of the council, I told this story a couple times. We have a very diverse, if you look at the city council, we've got a very diverse group. And I said to myself, wow, you know, before the redistricting, we had people essentially from the same areas.
Right.
Well, now you've got the way it should be,
right,
with people that are representative of the entire city. And I will say that I learned very quickly that each of those people in their own way had the best interests of the citizens at heart. The techniques and mannerisms and things to get things done may differ, but as long as you have a common goal to serve the citizens, you can find a way.
Right. Are you running because you think you should be the county executive, or do you have problems with it, with Mr. Culver, who's in there now?
Well, everybody's different. He has his way of doing things. I have my way of doing things. Rather than going after and finding and picking apart those things that I would do differently, I think that my record speaks for itself. What you see is what you get. I love to have discussions and consensus, but also civility. And I think that those, if you have respect for the individuals you're dealing with, then things work out very, very well.
Do you think the county is managed pretty well now?
I think that the county's got some great people. You know, let's face it, any CEO, when I was in business, the reason that I was successful is because I surrounded myself with the best people that there were. And then provide resources to them to allow them to do their jobs and be successful. The same applies in government. It doesn't matter whether you're in private sector or public sector. The concept of surrounding yourself with good people, and we have a lot of good people, don't get me wrong, and I think we need to give them the resources they need to do their job.
One of the things, I'm about to do a big story on the county budget, how it's changed over the last decade, and the idea about whether the revenue cap serves us going into the future. So I'm trying to examine all that. And one of the criticisms of the budget is that it's grown a lot since Mr. Culver was elected. Mm-hmm. But if you figure in inflation and the recession situation, it really hasn't grown. But what's your feeling about county spending?
Well, first of all, I'm not big on tax increases, and I think that through my experience in both business and working with the city, raising taxes is not always the solution to the problem. There are enough efficiencies that we can find in government, in my opinion, to protect the tax structure that we have. May it come to the point, some point, because of the cap, that we have real problems? We have to handle that as it comes. But if we can get and attract more businesses to the community, the tax burden on the individual citizens becomes a lot less.
Right.
So part of that quality of life that we're all searching for includes jobs, good jobs, and economic development, and that's what one of the goals would also be for my campaign.
One of the criticisms of the county, Mr. Culver, is that we've got a big reserve fund now. We have a rainy day fund for when things go really bad.
Yeah.
We have a reserve fund. And he's not very open to spending money on education, it seems.
Well, education is one of my top priorities. I go with the pay me now, pay me later philosophy. Either we educate the youth, get them prepared to go into the workforce and get them good jobs to become good citizens, or we end up paying for it later on when they end up in ECI, et cetera. So I think that it's money well spent because the return on investment is so high. And it's changing. When I was in school, you know, they were talking about, well, if you're prepared when you get in the 8th grade, you're ready to go. Now we're talking about preschoolers. And if they aren't prepared, if they can't read, if they're not literate by the time they get in to read at their grade levels, we've heard some of the horror stories about graduation statistics and things like that. So education is really, really important. You referred to the surplus. I haven't seen the number, I haven't seen the detail yet. I don't think anybody has, but I think that the one thing that I watch really closely is the amount of money that's in, for instance, in the city surplus. You have to have a certain amount of money to cover you through an event.
Right.
And generally that's a quarter of a year. So any more or less than that, if you have less than that, you got a problem. If you have more than that, and if you have significantly more than that, you're really holding the citizens' money that could be used. So my philosophy is keep a reasonable amount in surplus for that rainy day in case it happens, but also invest the taxes that the people have paid into something that gives them a return on their investment.
Right.
So.
One of the things, not to pick on Mr. Culver even more, but the I think the thing he doesn't buy into is the infrastructure changes, the idea for new schools. He seems very supportive of the early pre-K and a lot of the academic programs, but he's just not big on the buildings. Do you feel like our school buildings are okay?
Well, it's a known fact. I happen to be blessed with two, actually three teachers in my family, and they say they're all consistent in what they say. It takes a total picture to make a student successful. That includes the environment in which they learn and the modern technology in order to keep them up with the rest of the students throughout the country. And I think there's a balance between both of those. Certainly, we're not in the position where, like when my son was in middle school, the ceiling collapsing,
Right.
if you remember that.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, we're not at that point, but there are schools that are overcrowded. There are schools that have not been updated in ages. And I think it's important for us to look at those things and consider that, because I believe that the environment in which they learn is just as important as the teaching curriculum that they get.
Right. I think a lot of things, another thing people don't understand is the maintenance of effort. So the state sets a number, which is based on a formula that says you have to spend this much on education.
Right.
And that's all we spend. We spend right up to that number, and it's difficult for us to go past that.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about maintenance of effort?
I don't think it's adequate for what the needs are of our students. If you look at our population, which is growing rapidly in the school system, we need to make sure that we have top-notch teachers, that the kids are not hungry when they come to school, and all those things that make that situation better. So to limit ourselves by a number, call it what you want, make up a new name for it,
Right.
doesn't send, I don't think, the right message to the people who are trying to educate our youth. And I think that's important.
Here's a stretch. I'm going to do a long thing, but
Okay.
one of the things that makes me tear up is I go to the courthouse. There's the plaque on the wall. I'm getting right now. There's the plaque on the wall there on the courthouse that talks about the Great Fire in 1888, 1889, 1886, whenever it was, where the city burned down, except for the courthouse, basically. And that the fire companies on the fringes put their fire equipment on train cars, rushed to Salisbury to save Salisbury.
Right.
And I remember Ocean City going to save the Civic Center, helping in the downtown fire in 1979. And people really, oh my gosh, Salisbury's on fire. We have to go save Salisbury. Well, now when I'm out socially and I'm defending Salisbury to people who live out in the county who don't understand Salisbury, they drive in and they drive out. They don't seem to like Salisbury the way I do, or they don't have the patience for it. So what's it going to be like for you to go out there to the Sharptowns and the Powellvilles and talk about your experience in Salisbury and how to apply that on a county level?
Yeah. Well, I never understood that. I mean, I lived, when I first moved down here, I lived in the unincorporated section of Salisbury. I fought fires with the Fruitland Fire Department.
That's right, yes.
I fought you talk about big fires, I fought the Kerry Distributor Fire
Right.
for 7 days.
Right.
And we all got together to do that. I don't see any difference between the city and the county. I don't think when people in the county, I mean, I understand where you're coming from with what you said, but I don't get it. Because when people come into Third Friday from all over the county, they don't say, oh, I crossed into the city line now.
Right.
And when I go to Pemberton for an event, or when I go to Winter Place to go to the Pork in the Park, or I go for the county fair,
Yeah.
I don't say, oops, I left the city.
Right.
I firmly believe that what's good for the city is great for the county. And if we're successful in the city, then the county benefits from that. And all the people in the county benefit from that. I understand, and I think that probably the situation, and I can understand it. And one of the things I'm going to do, as I said yesterday in my campaign, in my opening, that the issues in the metro area are not necessarily the issues in the rural and agricultural areas. And I know more about the metro areas, and I'm including Fruitland, Delmar, Parsonburg, Hebron. I'm including those. I know about those places. The more rural places, I don't know. So And those issues that they have could be totally different and are totally different than what the metro issues are. So for this year, I'm going to spend time doing walking tours of each of the towns in the county and listen to them and find out what their issues are.
Right.
The quality of life issues are all the same. We want the same things. Everybody does. But those specific issues that are town related or area related, those are the things that I want to learn, and I'm open to that. And I think that if we can combine what we've done and take credit as a county for, hey, you know what? Next year, the county, the Eastern Shore, we're having a National Folk Festival. Well, that economic impact alone is going to affect the entire county.
Right.
Because it's going to relieve some of the pressure that we have on the citizens. The marathon's going to do the same thing. So that's how I view the city-county thing.
Yeah. I had a reader call the other day, and he was very angry. And I shouldn't talk about like one cranky guy, how he's affecting politics, but he's angry because he likes the paper and he wants us to cover the whole county, and I just don't have the resources to do that. Right now we're still early, and we're the Salisbury Independent. And he said, well, I just hate Salisbury. He says, I won't even go into Salisbury. I said, well, if you fall down dead, tell the ambulance driver that you don't want to go to Salisbury.
Yeah.
You know, then they realize, well, wait, Salisbury is important in our lives.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that most people in their overall picture on a day-to-day basis, when they come into shop, when they go down to Third Fridays, when they want to sit by the river and talk, I don't think they think about it.
Right.
But I think that there are things, and I think some of the things that are developed and some of the divisiveness that's developed is influenced. It's not, you know, they don't go out to look to hate Salisbury. That's not where it's at.
One of the things I see in Hebron, Sharptown, Powellville, everywhere, Willards, Pittsville, the Parsonsburg, the volunteer fire companies are sort of the community hubs there.
Yeah.
And everyone's a member, everyone knows what goes on. Great service club, basically helping the communities. And there's a situation with Salisbury, the paid fire service in Salisbury, and some of the volunteers, a lot of miscommunication. You're going to go out there and have to face that. What's your thought about that?
I have no problem facing it. I've been a fireman for not just in Maryland, but also in New York, and a volunteer. And it's a brotherhood. And I think that as long as they know where you're coming from, it's going to be fine. The real issue with the fire service is if there's a problem, firemen are going to go.
Right.
I mean, you know, I know there was a lot of frustration and everything, but the bottom line is that firemen are a close-knit group that when push comes to shove, they're going to do whatever it takes to keep everybody safe. So I'm not going to have any issues going out there. There may be some people that are unhappy, but we negotiated a deal in good faith. We had an agreement in place that was a legal binding agreement, and it went on afterwards. And it's a shame because it really damaged some of the relationships. But they can be repaired.
The perception is, people tell me that the fire service agreement says stuff that it doesn't.
Yeah.
Like there's a big misunderstanding about what's going on within that agreement.
Well, it's pretty clear.
It's a financial agreement. Yeah.
Right, and if you look at it, let's say we'll take it away from for the fire department for a while. Let's take it from a business point of view. The territory that was going to be given to the other organization averages about 158 calls a year. So financially what we were going to do, what was proposed was give them $400,000 to start up a new department. Well, if you take $400,000 and divide it by 158, you come out with somewhere over $3,000 a call. And the fire agreement, the cost per call is, let's put it this way, is significantly less than that, by a factor of 10 maybe. Right. So I think there's two sides of it. The one is the emotional side, and the other one is the actual financial side of it. My dad always told me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, Could we do things a little differently, and maybe communication could have been better? We're talking about communication?
Yeah.
Maybe. But I think that ultimately, I think the agreement that was worked out, which everybody signed of their own free will, works out fine. And we'll just evaluate it on as it expires.
We all go around and we think we understand the world and how things work, and then you walk into a place like Lower Shore Enterprises and you realize you don't know anything about the world at all. Tell me about your experience there and how you got there.
Well, it was
And tell me what it is for people who might not know.
Well, Lower Shore Enterprises is an employer. Actually, it encompasses employment, training, job placement for individuals with disabilities. I had the extreme honor, they say God works in mysterious ways, and he does. When I retired from my job, from my last private sector job, and sold the company that I was running for the parent company, I was great for about 3 months. And then my wife told me that I was not ready for retirement, and I agreed with her. And so our kids were here. We were in Connecticut. And I said, it's time for us to go home. And my wife was thrilled. We could be near the grandkids. I always loved this area. And Henry Parker had told me once when I decided that I had to go and take this new job that I'll be back because I got sand between my toes. I remember him saying that. And it's true. So we came back. We wanted to come back, but I had nothing to do. So I called, I called Dave Ryan, Ed Urban, and a couple of my friends. And I said, listen, if you hear about anything, let me know. Well, that evening, I got a phone call from Dave Ryan. He called back and he said...
And he's the County Economic Development Director, basically.
Right. And he was having lunch with Ed Thomas and Michelle Thomas.
From the Bank of
Bank of Delmarva. And Michelle was the chairman of the board of, I think at that time, of
the shelter
Lower Shore Enterprises.
Yeah.
So they said, are you aware of Lower Shore? And I said, oh yeah. I said, when I was running the plant in Northwood, we would buy all of our pallets from them and picnic tables, and this goes back. This is a lot of years ago.
Right.
So they said, well, we're looking for a CEO. Would you be interested? I said, boy, that sounds kind of intriguing. He says, well, can you come down Monday? So, and this was a Friday, I think. So I said, yeah, I can be there Monday. So we came down and I interviewed with the board, and they told me I was a finalist. And I got up to leave, and I interviewed with the board, and then they said, could you sit out in the lobby? And I said, yeah, I can sit it there for you, because we have a couple of questions for you. So after the whole board left, the search committee called me back in, and the president said, well, we'd like to offer you the job, but we can't pay you what you were getting. I said, no, don't worry about the finance. That's not why I'm doing it.
Right.
I'm doing it because I know what you do, and I think it's the right thing to do. And I told them during the whole interview process that if you're looking for a clinician, I'm not your guy. If you're looking for a business guy, I'm your guy. And the rest is history. I took it over. We did very well. They now have Bill Turner is now the CEO, doing a wonderful job. The board is growing and getting younger, which is good. And we're still serving. There's 156 people that are being coached, working, get a paycheck every week, and are out in the community where they should be.
There must have been some people along the way who were employed there who touched you in a certain way.
Yeah, there are a couple people. Jimmy Reed, who used to be a bus driver, and now he's running the transportation piece for them, was really, really good. Lori Andrews, who has more patience than anybody I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there's the whole staff. You don't work there unless you're special. You really have to have the heart and the patience and the love that it takes. Judy, it goes. I mean, I can just go on. Crystal, Heather. It goes on and on. And each of those people, I still see them. I'm on the board, so I go there a lot, and we still communicate. They're a great group of people.
Okay, you get elected. First day, what do you do?
I'm not going to do anything different than I did whenever I took over a company. Keep my mouth shut, listen, talk to people, find out what their goals and objectives are, where they think we are, spend a time analyzing, meet with the council as quickly as possible to set some mutual targets in the way we're going to behave, and then observe for a little while and then get into it.
That's really exciting. How can people get a hold of you? Do you have a website? How's that set up?
Yeah, actually, it was funny because the website came up before I announced. A group of guys and gals got together and developed a website, and it's heathforwhycomico.com, and it's populated. It's not complete yet because I want to put some stuff on it. But it's getting there, and there's connections up there. There's an email section where they can email me. I'll get back to them and respond. There's a little bit about my history. There's some information about donations if they want to donate to the campaign, et cetera. But it's a work in progress, and I'm looking forward to this trip. I can't wait to get out there.
I forgot to ask a question. You're going to stay on as council president throughout the election?
Yeah, I'm going to stay on. I made a commitment to them, and I'm going to stay with it until a decision is made. So,
he's our first challenger in this race for county executive coming up in 2018. He's Jack Heath. Thanks for being here, Jack.
Greg, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.